Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 21, Text 48. Ahotajam. Seeing that the monarch had come to his hermitage, and was bowing before him, the sage greeted him with benediction and received him with due honor. Purport. Emperor Swayambhuva Manu not only approached the cottage of dried leaves possessed by the hermit Kardama, but also offered respectful obeisances unto him. Similarly, it was the duty of the hermit to offer blessings to kings who used to approach his hermitage in the jungle. Text 49. Grihitarhanam asinam samyatam prinayam muni smaram bhagavadadesham ichaha shlakshnaya gira. After receiving the sage's attention, the king sat down and was silent. Recalling the instructions of the Lord, Kardama then spoke to the king as follows, delighting him with his sweet accents. Text 50. Nunam chankramanam deva satam samrakshanayate vidhaya cha satam yastvam hare shaktir hipalini. The tour you have undertaken, O Lord, is surely intended to protect the virtuous and kill the demons, since you embody the protecting energy of Sri Hari. Purport. It appears from many Vedic literatures, especially histories like Srimad Bhagavatam and the Puranas, that the pious kings of old used to tour their kingdoms in order to give protection to the pious citizens and to chastise or kill the impious. Sometimes they used to kill animals in the forests to practice the killing art, because without such practice they would not be able to kill the undesirable elements. Kshatriyas are allowed to commit violence in that way, because violence for a good purpose is a part of their duty. Here two terms are clearly mentioned: vadhaya, for the purpose of killing, and asatam, those who are undesirable. The protecting energy of the king is supposed to be the energy of the Supreme Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskritam. The Lord descends to give protection to the pious and to kill the demons. The potency, therefore, to give protection to the pious and kill the demons or undesirables is directly an energy from the Supreme Lord. And the king or the chief executive of the state is supposed to possess such energy. In this age, it is very difficult to find such a head of state who is expert in killing the undesirables. Modern heads of state sit very nicely in their palaces and try without reason to kill innocent persons. So here we have Kardama Muni greeting Swayambhuva Manu as Swayambhuva Manu, who is practically the Lord of all of the human beings within the universe, is on a tour throughout the universe, but this tour had a very special purpose. He was searching for a very nice husband for his daughter Satarupa. This daughter of Swayambhuva Manu was very qualified in all respects, so she required a very qualified husband who was more qualified than her. It's not very good if the wife is more qualified than the husband. There's not very much peace in the family. So he required to find a super excellent man. Therefore, he personally, for the sake of taking care of his daughter, searched out a first-class husband and came upon Kardama Muni exactly as it was predicted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appeared before Kardama to give him benediction. So the benediction was there, and so now it was time for the benediction to be realized. So Kardama Muni was standing before Swayambhuva Manu, and also, just as it should be, Kardama was receiving the king very respectfully. It is the Vedic tradition that the kings shall visit the sages within the forest. Generally, in the Vedic age, it worked like this. Within the society or the kingdom, there were, of course, the divisions of Varnashram Dharma, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, and every kingdom had Brahmanas who lived within the kingdom and advised the king in various affairs. Sometimes the Brahmanas would advise the kings in monetary affairs, economic advisors, or social affairs, or the affairs of justice, or the affairs of simply technological requirements, building bridges, engineering, mathematics, astrology, astronomy, or other principles which were required within the society. And at the same time, they educated the children, educated in the universities, and they gave some spiritual guidance. Those Brahmanas were good, and they were ministers, and they were very proper. However, when the king really wanted to get the topmost essential spiritual benedictions, he would go to the forest. Sometimes when the kings were on hunting expeditions, they used to meet sages who lived within hermitages within the forest. The rishis did not live in the cities. They did not live near civilization. They lived separate, and they lived together with other rishis who simply practiced spiritual life. They were not engaged in practical affairs. And they had great and enormous strength and power. Extremely powerful in intelligence and in mystic powers. So, these saintly personalities, the sages who were living in the forest like that, they used to receive these kings very nicely, with all offerings of honor and respect. First of all, because they were by nature respectful, and second of all, because they knew that this person is the representative of God. Therefore, they used to also call them Naradeva. The one who goes by the title of a man, but at the same time, he, being a king, Naradeva refers to one who is a king, yet who's also like a demigod. And this was because he offered protection to the citizens of the state, and offered them protection just like the demigods would protect the people. So, such persons were very powerful, and the sages accepted that and worshipped them nicely. But the king, he knew well that these sages, they were very respectful, but the real great personalities were the sages. So the kings would beg for benedictions and blessings from the sages, so that the sages would give them the power and the potency to do everything very nicely. The kings knew that without the blessings of the sages, that there was no way that they could properly take care of the affairs of state. So the king would know that unless in his kingdom he had the blessings of the great sages, he couldn't possibly accomplish the purposes of his kingdom. He wouldn't succeed, because he knew the real power comes from above. Nowadays, a lot of persons like to act without considering where the source of their potency is. They just like to do things thinking that they are themselves the source of their own potency, without realizing that everything comes from superior energy. Superior energy. And that the real superior energy is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the rishis and sages, they represent the Supreme Personality of Godhead in truth. Therefore, the kings used to go to these persons and say, please give us completely your blessings, your energy, your mercy, so that we may accomplish our affairs of state in the proper fashion. So the sages generally gave such benedictions to the kings. We find that the king acts like the Supreme Lord would act. In the same way, paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskritam dharma samsthapanataya. The king is supposed to regulate the religious principles, dharma samsthapanataya, in order to make sure that these religious principles are properly maintained in the kingdom. Make sure that the brahmanas act like brahmanas, the kshatriyas like kshatriyas, etc. And that above all, there will be spiritual advancement. So, similarly, the king was supposed to make sure there were no demons causing trouble in the kingdom. There were no rascals who were trying to ruin the whole situation within a kingdom. And he was supposed to give protection to the brahmanas and those who were devotees of the Lord, so that the worship of the Lord could go on nicely. Now, nowadays, where will you find such a personality? You will not, because in the modern world, there are no such personalities. Everybody in this modern world is simply interested in money-making activity or sense gratification. Above all, money-making activity, because if you can just make money, then you'll be able to succeed in doing all kinds of things for sense gratification. Therefore, the governments of today simply engage in money-making activities in various forms. They tax the people, and by taking taxes, they fill their treasuries, and with the full treasuries, they squander money like anything. There are examples of some countries in the third world who the presidents have successfully stolen billions of dollars from the government treasury. They say in Mexico, the whole national debt is simply that which has been stolen by previous presidents. So we find that nowadays the government acts like thieves, because they don't protect the people, yet they take so much from people. Therefore, Vedic civilization is lost. And it is very, very difficult to reestablish proper civilization in this world. The people, they do not understand the principles. They don't understand we're not this body. We're pure spirit soul. We're part and parcel of Krishna. We're actually meant to serve Krishna in loving devotion. Nobody understands like that. They think that in this world it is better to engage in sense gratification for the body and nothing more than the body. They don't understand the whole purpose of this human form of life is to get out of the entanglement of birth and death and go back home, back to Godhead. This material world is a hellish place in general. But if there's a Vedic civilization, then perhaps that king can keep the hellish conditions minimized. In fact, we create our own hellish conditions. By our own actions, our own mentality, we create the hellish condition. That hellish condition is created by the way we engage in the mode of passion and ignorance. Modes of passion and ignorance are there, and the more we engage in these lower modes of nature, the more we suffer. You create your own suffering by acting in these lower modes of nature, and by acting in such a way that sinful activities are taking place. Nunam pramatta kurute vikarma jidindriya pritaya apranoti. We create our own troubles by acting for the sake of our material senses and mind, and thus we fall down from the platform of spiritual life. We fall down from the platform of properly following any spiritual principle, and we become entangled within the cycle of birth and death, simply for the satisfaction of the senses. We find this is described in many places of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Tesham pramatta nidanam pushanapina pashati. Because of being insane due to lusty desires, one cannot see what is obvious, although it is directly before him. One cannot see what is obvious. Therefore, one should understand the spiritual principle of life and try to avoid all entanglements within the lusty desires of this material world. In this material world, there are so many lusty desires that everybody is simply being involved in. And these things are keeping us bound up hand and foot within this material network. Therefore, we should try hard to avoid contact with the objects of the senses, which will bring us away from surrender to Krishna. That is why the sages and rishis stay in their hermitages. That is why they are engaged in simply spiritual activities without entangling in the material world. They don't bother building fancy temples and houses. To build fancy temples, this is all a facility required for those who are still very much attached. In fact, the sages and saintly persons, they live in any simple facility. They don't accept big fancy things because they know this will make them too much attached in this material world. And this entanglement, this attachment, will cause them trouble. Therefore they avoid it. That's why they live outside. But they give instruction to those who want to engage in fruitive activities. They give them a good instruction so that they can do so, but in a very religious way, spiritual way, proper fashion. So, therefore, those sages who are living outside, they were not afraid, but they didn't want to be entangled. They could give good advice from the material point of view, but they didn't want to be entangled by it. So, we find that the desire to avoid the entanglement of the material world is very good. It's very good. You can see, of course, some kind of entanglement is very good. To be entangled in the network of Krishna's service, this is very good. Just like, for instance, we've been engaging here, in case you didn't know, in total chaos for the last few weeks. And the chaos was increasing to a fever pitch. So, normally speaking, chaos, having hundreds of people running around all over the place, non-stop, this would be considered a big entanglement. But somehow, when it's Krishna's chaos like this, and it's accomplishing nice things for the satisfaction of the Lord, everybody's in complete bliss. So, we're not working for ourselves, we're working for Krishna. And therefore, we can avoid the entanglement that is produced within such ordinary speaking activities for accomplishing results which may be understood to be fruitive. So many results may be there, and we may misunderstand them to be fruitive. We may think that to make this room nice, not yet, but will be, nice, then this is a fruitive activity. It is simply so that we can all sit in a nice room. But in fact, devotees don't care if they're sitting in a nice room or a not nice room, if they're hearing Srimad Bhagavatam class or having kirtan. At that time, it doesn't disturb them one way or another, whatever kind of a room they're in, just as long as there's sufficient air and heat. Air we have plenty of. Heat is coming, don't worry. So, we don't require much. Simple facility. We can get along. But we do it for Krishna's service, for satisfying the Lord. The deities, they are very much pleased when we can establish them in a nice place. Therefore, we have some plans, which we're not going to tell you, to make this place much more nice than it is right now. But it's not for the sake of us, because it won't matter. If there are beautiful things around these columns, or the columns are plain painted white, what does it matter for us? It does not matter. For us, the purpose of the point, the columns, is to hold the ceiling up, so that we can sit here and have kirtan, chant Hare Krishna, and hear Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. The whole point of spiritual life is the sound vibration, the transcendental sound. This is the real essence of spiritual life. That is why in the Bhagavatam itself, it states that the essence of the spiritual activity is Srinvata Sakata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana Vrijantasto Yabhajani Vidunoti Suritatam. The basis upon which it is all built is Shravana and Kirtanam. Shravanam, hearing. Kirtanam, chanting. If we can just engage ourselves in proper hearing and chanting the holy name of the Lord and the Lord's philosophy and pastime, then we'll make all kinds of spiritual advancement. And then we'll serve Krishna very nicely. Therefore, even though we've been having chaos marathon, we never gave up the hearing and chanting of the name of the Lord and His pastime philosophy, because without that, nothing goes on. If one just starts working without hearing and chanting, then this work activity becomes fruitive. And then one starts performing ordinary material activities. If you do not chant 16 rounds a day, the activities you perform become fruitive. And gradually you reduce to the level of some kind of karma yogi. And then from that level one reduces even more. He becomes simply a karmi. So, to engage in devotional service means we must base everything on the procedure of chanting. Round 16 every day. Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You may have noticed this room is very good for chanting. That's what we have made, a room that's good for chanting. To chant the holy name of the Lord. Every day chanting. Because then our activities become spiritual and purifying too. Every day chanting, every day hearing. Increasing our loving devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead more and more. And such loving devotion, increased more and more, will bring very much satisfaction within the life. You may have noticed also, you Sankirtaners, on your marathon. Formerly throughout the year you were taking it easy because you wanted to save your bodies. You were thinking that you were your body to some extent, and therefore you were taking it easy. And then when marathon came, you took off. Now which time of the year were you more happy? When you were taking care of everything so nicely, or when you were just going like mad on the marathon? I ask you. Everybody laughs. Of course. Sleeping was going on. And now waking up is going on. In fact, what we consider marathon is simply the process of devotional service. In fact, serving Krishna with all of one's energy and enthusiasm, determinedly, powerfully, this is devotional service. In fact, we don't know any other mode than marathon personally. It's just sometimes others cooperate. In fact, the best thing to do is to just work yourself to death. But remember, at the moment of death, you better be chanting Hare Krishna. If one is very nicely taking care of himself, then even at the moment of death, he'll be thinking of taking care of his body. But if in fact he is engaged fully, 100%, in the devotional service of the Lord throughout his life, then at the moment of death, he'll have no choice but to remember Krishna. His mind will simply run, like the Ganges runs towards the ocean, towards Krishna. Because one will be purified. If his whole life, all he ever did was serve Krishna, at the moment of death, he'll have no other activity than serving Krishna. Except now there's some problem. Heart doesn't work. Brain stops functioning. So it's more of a test. Sometimes we are tested in our devotion. How strong is our devotion? And certainly there's no greater test than the moment of death. Because at that time, all facilities for performing material activity are finished. The body's taken away. All the plans we had are taken away. Everything we try to accomplish is taken away. Our friends are taken away. Our relatives are taken away. Our beloved husband or wife is taken away. Our most faithful and wonderful children are taken away. And all the money we had stored in the bank for our old age is also taken away. Our car is taken away. Our motorcycle is taken away. Our stereo set is taken away. Our prasadam plate is taken away. Everything is taken away, and we are left with nothing. And at that time, one will be very, very disturbed if he's attached to any of these things. Can you imagine having to take birth again because you're attached to your prasadam plate? Again, back in the material world, in a womb, packed up tight, just because we're attached to some nonsense thing of this material world? No more. No more birth. Should be our vow. We must take this vow in this lifetime. No more birth. But to do that, one must act fully, 100% dedicated, to make sure that in fact it is so, no more birth. Because we must act fully in devotional service, 100%. 100% in Krishna's service. And that means go like anything. Actually, yesterday somebody asked me, what do I have to do here in all this construction? And I said, all I do is come down and I scream, go, schnell, each. In whichever language it happens to be needed. We just scream all day, go, go, go. Because in fact, this is the way that we become inspired in devotional service. We can feel the unwanted material things just getting pulled away from the heart. It's like when you're on marathon, in the Sankirtan marathon, isn't it? All the impure things just get kicked right out of the van door. It's such a nice atmosphere. And when you have kirtan, ooh, it's so uproarious. And as soon as the marathon's finished, then immediately everybody goes, ugh. Maya again, oh no. Well, I guess I have to be in Maya for another 10 months. Why? There's no reason. It's simply the mind, nonsense demon up here, just telling you, look, you are your body. Come on. Don't you understand? Don't you understand you have to take care of your body very nicely so that it can die in a very good condition? And how do you know you've got another 40 years to live? Maybe they drop a bomb on our head and we're all finished. How can you say, I've got to take care of this body because it's got to be good when it's old? Who says you're going to get old? Who guarantees your old age? There's no guarantee in this material world. Anything can happen. Immediately get a disease, something happens, boom, dead. So, not that we're trying to scare you into becoming Krishna conscious, but if it happens to work, well, that's good. It's not that we're making you're going to burn in hell statement. The fact is, we're already in hell. It's not that we're going to burn in hell. We're already burning in the hell of this material world. If somebody thinks hell is much worse than this, well, he may be right. But this is bad enough. We don't have to go much further to find trouble. This material world's full of trouble. Just breathe air, you get in trouble. It's so polluted nowadays. You just live this material world in Kali Yuga, you get in trouble. So therefore, we should make a determination that although this body may be filled with all kinds of contaminated things, at the end of this lifetime, we are not going to come back to the material world to breathe polluted air again. to eat again, to sleep again, to mate again, and defend again, in the same way we've been doing it for hundreds of thousands of lifetimes, millions and billions of lifetimes, again and again and again, the same thing. Punah punas charvita charvananam, chewing and chewing again and again, the same thing. Therefore, the Bhagavatam is just asking us, requesting us, begging us, don't take birth again. Before the next death, become Krishna conscious. Manusham durlabha janma, this human form of life is very rare. Devotional service is even rarer, because only the smallest amount of persons take up devotional service out of the whole mass of humankind. Therefore, take up devotional service. Don't give it up, not for anything. And push on devotional service like anything. Don't slow down. Speed up. And become fully satisfied. Prabhupada said the duty of the brahmachari is to collapse on the floor at the end of the day. If you have to lay on the floor and count sheep at night, there's something wrong with you. Prabhupada said it. When a brahmachari lays on the floor, he says Hare Krishna and he's asleep. He doesn't have to go through all kinds of mental creations in order to fall asleep. Because he's so tired from acting for Krishna all day. Just boom, lights out. The whole world can blow up, he doesn't care. That's actually very good. That one gives all his energy to Krishna. We should do like that. How to give more energy, how to do more for Krishna. How to make it better for Krishna, nicer for Krishna, more satisfying for Krishna. When the deities see how nicely we are engaging for them, they are satisfied and they will smile upon us and give us their mercy. There's no doubt about it. They're already very happy to see all of this action going on. They're just waiting to come down to their new place. Of course, it must be finished because it's not nice to do banging and smashing when they're sitting there. But we should try to please them. They are the lords of this place. None of us are the lords or masters here. We're the servants of the deity. Therefore, we do whatever is required for their satisfaction. We simply take care to make sure that that which they require, or that which they desire, or that which will please them gets done. Therefore, being servants of the deities, we will stop here, because it wasn't a short class. It was a long class. You've cheated me by listening too good. I couldn't stop in time. Now this is very bad. Now it's almost 9 o'clock. So we don't have much time. So everybody has to. I hope prasadam is ready. And if it's not the greatest, don't lament. The kitchen was a complete chaos until 1 in the morning last night. And it's probably still not most together thing. And if it's good, you should offer obeisances to the cook. And then just run out like mad. Get dressed and let's just clean this place from top to bottom like anything. And those of you who are assigned to work crews, work like total fanatics and madmen. If we can finish this whole temple area before, you can go on the demonstration too. Anybody who finishes his work before can go on the demonstration. So that's an impetus to work like mad. Haribol!